Good morning. We stand before you today to discuss the topic of American interventionism and how it has impacted foreign countries across the world. My name is Benjamin Bell, and today with me is Ray Gouveia, Pope Halvey, Ranger Rodriguez, and Caroline Vanderlinder. To first comprehend why American interventionism exists, we must first understand the incentives for the American government to intervene. Frida Gittes, a former reporter for CNN, familiar with international politics and economic trends, wrote an article in 2013 of August named 5 Reasons the U.S. Must Intervene in Syria. One of her main points during that article was that many other world leaders would be watching the U.S. very closely after August 21st, 2012, the day when President Obama warned Syria that the use of chemical weapons is a red line. Over the course of the Syrian civil war, which started in March of 2011, over 100,000 Syrian citizens have been killed. According to Michelle Bentley, a lecturer in international relations at the University of London, tensions arose again in August of 2013 when the U.S. government confirmed that Bashar al-Assad, the president of Syria, had carried out a large chemical weapons attack known as Ghouta Sarin in Damascus, which killed approximately 1,500 people. During the course of the attack, as you can see here, these are the regions that were most affected by the chemical attack. And 2 days after the confirmation of the attack by the American government, President Obama in the Rose Garden announced that he would seek permission from Congress to launch airstrikes against Assad. This quick response to the 1,500 deaths due to chemical weapons and the lack of response to the previous 100,000 deaths due to conflict perhaps implies that the U.S. cares more about the method of killing rather than the number of lives taken. The acceleration of the Syrian civil war prompted the U.S. to intervene. Many Syrians were forced to leave their homes, and the threat of warfare spreading across the region was very big, since the Middle East was and still remains a large exporter of oil and is connected to many other countries and global commerce.
Historically, the United States has had much interest in the Middle East. A pure example of this can be in Iran in 1953, when U.S. President Dwight D. Eisenhower authorized the CIA to overthrow Mohammad Mossadegh, who was the leader of Iran. According to Farouk Bezin, a journal specializing in Iran and Iraq, the reason for this coup was because of the attempt of Mossadegh to nationalize the oil industry. After Mossadegh was overthrown, the U.S. implemented the Shah, who was led by Mohammad Pahlavi. Mohammad Pahlavi implemented pro-Western economic policies that, according to Avilia Bessarian, who was affiliated with Western Michigan University, created much nationalistic, socialist, and religious strands within Iran that opposed the Shah. As you can see on this picture to my left, this is a protest during the 1979 revolution, which had a direct correlation to the implementation of the Shah, in which the people are protesting the Shah and their U.S. counterparts, accusing the U.S. of influencing their own government too much. Once the new Islamic Republic of Iran was formed after the revolution, the new leader, Ayatollah Khomeini, expressed his protest against the United States intervention by nationalizing the industries such as oil, car, airplane, and copper, in direct protest against the past of U.S. intervention. Overall, you can see that through the coup of 1953, much conflict and dissent in the Iranian people has been formulated and expressed.
Looking at the technological aspect of U.S. intervention, in 1961, the United States became involved in the Vietnam War. Until 1972, they used a lethal herbicide named Agent Orange to destroy enemy forests. Consequently, this was claimed to have caused birth defects, cancer, and other diseases by the Vietnam Association for Victims of Agent Orange. This put the U.S. up against international law, causing some instability between the United States and Vietnam. Coming to more recent times, the U.S. became involved in the Middle East when they gave Afghan rebels Stinger missiles for defense against the Soviet Union. This caused instability in later years due to the regrouping of the rebels to create the Taliban in the 1990s. Due to this regrouping and further development of U.S. military technology, the U.S. has begun to use drones or unmanned aerial vehicles in both warfare and surveillance in other nations. Surveys conducted by the Pew Research Center have shown that the U.S.'s use of drones in surveillance has caused controversy. This can be seen in the graph here, which shows opposing opinions on the use of drones between U.S. citizens and those of foreign nations.
geopolitical stability. According to USAID, over $30 billion is allotted annually by the economic assistance of foreign governments by the United States. As you can see in this picture, these are the areas where the most foreign assistance are prevalent. These programs are funded to help education, economic assistance, and public health. This provides resources and uses their international influence to help developing countries and contribute to the community efforts. For example, according to Mark Bosboyd, a trade embargo enacted the Cuban Democracy Act of 1992, which actively barred access to the United States ports for 6 months for any merchant ship which stopped at a Cuban harbor, resulting in a severe limitation of medical goods. The outcome of the United States determination to condemn Cuban actions led to the decline of the civilians' quality of life.
Although it can be argued that the U.S. aids developing countries until they are able to maintain their geopolitical stability and keep peace around the globe, American intervention has had negative effects in the countries that have experienced U.S. actions, often leading to direct U.S. opposition. Stephen Kinzer, a senior fellow in international and public affairs, said that the actions taken by the United States in these countries have insinuated that society needs to be changed and that these changes have generated oppositional mentalities which have festered into radical organizations. Due to these actions, the U.S. has been a target of major terrorist groups including ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and the Taliban. The Bureau of Investigative Journalism in Great Britain estimates the number of persons killed by drone attacks at 3,000 to 4,500, including well over 200 children. The picture above is an image of a protest, a direct result to these statistics. This reveals how U.S. creation of civilian death have enhanced the probability for oppositional forces to recruit. South Sudan is seen as one of the world's most corrupt nations according to Transparency International Annual Corruption Perception Index. There is no doubt the U.S. offered their help, but their plan ultimately failed. Kinzer described the situation by stating that the U.S. deluded itself into believing that factions in South Sudan would behave as ordered by U.S. troops. Before intervening in foreign affairs, the United States should question if intervention would alleviate suffering or only cause more. This was not because little was being done on behalf of the United States, but because the South Sudanese did not attempt to cooperate under U.S. terms. They believed that with the presence of the United States, their lives were only put at risk. These changes in South Sudanese perception of American involvement represent the exacerbation of conflict during the United States campaign. Although U.S. interference has led to positive outcomes in the case of Syria, the actions taken by the U.S. has also brought about resentment and decreased the quality of living in places like Iraq and Cuba. Considering the several geographical locations which the U.S. has intervened, the cumulative outcomes have been negative. And as the U.S. continues to intervene in other countries economically, politically, and militarily, the United States continues to speak geopolitical instability as nations oppose their actions. Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys. Again, question your right to left. Are they too close? Or are they still okay?
Oh, you're good.
Ben, we'll start with you. Where did you particularly grow in your knowledge on this as you went through the project?
When I first started researching about this project, I wanted to see a more positive outlook on this idea that U.S. interventionism often brings peace and stability. However, as we progressed through our question, we started to develop and we learned that perhaps we are trying to help, but often there are many instances where it just does not work out. I see it in Caroline's part, where she describes the negative effects that happened in South Sudan. Even though the U.S. attempted to help, sometimes things just didn't go their way.
All right, thank you. Ray, tell me what one source did you find to be the most helpful for you?
Honestly, I feel like the sources that were the most helpful that I actually didn't put in the presentation, but in my paper, which was prevalent, was primary sources from people such as Mohammed Pahlavi and Dwight D. Eisenhower, and statements that they made describing their positions in Iran. So,
all right, thank you. Tell me how your group selected the different strategies to tackle this question.
Well, at first we had a hard time trying to find the different aspects of U.S. interventionism, and at first we wanted to do it on the geography, so we wanted to go from do Asia and then the Middle East and then maybe South America, but then we realized we couldn't find enough evidence for it, so we went to the more ideological and technological and political and economic too, and it seemed more successful.
Okay. To echo on that, but this is for you, for Angel, to echo on that, as you guys went at it a different way and brought in this information, did that create any differing perspectives that became a problem in coming up with your resolution?
Well, I believe that we all thought that there was more positive outcomes of the United States helping other countries in different ways, but our perspective changed when we realized, as Brent said, that there are some negative and positive ways that the United States has tried to help, but the outcomes hasn't been as good.
Do you have any personal experience from Venezuela that helps you answer this question?
Yes, well, the United States doesn't really help Venezuela, and even though the president can feel some type of way about the United States and says some negative stuff about the United States, and looking at the fact that we do need help, the United States doesn't really help our country.
So it's a place we're not intervening, although we do buy a lot of oil from there. And as this is a big question. So as you guys are looking at something this and the United States goes forward, what advice would you have for decision makers and they go forward about whether the U.S. should get involved in different places around the world?
I feel that they should definitely see the different outlooks on people and how they get affected by the intervention, and if they get hurt in some type of way, that would definitely help out in the process, and that would definitely help the government, the U.S. government, to see if they should be involved or if they shouldn't. They should see that if the intervention would actually help alleviate suffering or not.
Okay, cool. Thank you.